I'm so excited to introduce Sandeep Johal. Sandeep Johal is a Canadian visual artist whose art practice moves between intricate black and white line drawings to large-scale colorful murals, which are aesthetically and conceptually inspired by her South Asian heritage. She believes in the power of art to create awareness around issues related to cultural identity, gender equality, and human rights. Her work is an expression of her social and cultural concerns, particularly gender justice. Sandeep was the 2019 recipient of Darpan magazine's Artistic Visionary Award and has worked on projects with the Vancouver Art Gallery, Burrard Arts Foundation, the Vancouver Mural Festival, and Indian Summer Festival. She has had her work featured in several print and online publications, and Sandeep lives and works with her family in Vancouver, British Columbia. So welcome, Sandeep.
Thanks for having me, Tristesse.
Sandeep, will you describe your art practice to me and maybe get into what materials you use, what your content's about, and where you think you're going, maybe?
Sure, yeah. It's pretty multifaceted. I do drawing, collage, painting, and murals. Murals have become a really big part of my practice. And I often tell stories with my work, a lot of women-centered stories, and I always want to make sure I'm presenting their stories through this lens of beauty and empowerment. And I think probably in the next year, I'll be moving into textiles just to try a different medium out. Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about the drawings that you do?
Yeah, so when I started doing art in earnest a few years ago, I really needed to figure out how to not be so critical about my work and how to get what's in my head just out on paper and be okay with how it turned out. So I made sure every night I spent time just drawing. And it was more focused on the process of drawing rather than what I was actually creating. And the more I started drawing, the more I started noticing these kind of similar motifs and patterns that were emerging. And then eventually, probably in about a year, I developed my visual vocab. And then that vocab has been transferred into my paintings and into my murals. I've added color to them. It's been a really interesting process just to see how your voice and your work can evolve when you commit to creating.
So are you saying that because of your drawing practice, which was something you did every day, that it then translated into different mediums?
Yeah, oh yeah, totally. Pretty much everything that I do is based off of a drawing study. So I'll be really compelled for like a couple of weeks just to stay up late every night and draw. And I don't know why. I don't know what is pushing me to do that. And then something will come my way, a project will come my way, and I just start sifting through the drawings and they form the basis of the work that I create for the project.
Yeah, I've heard of that a lot, that drawing is the real base of many artists' practice.
Yeah.
It's a constant creative exercise. It gets your brain going. It's demanding that you look and see carefully. Can you talk a little bit about the content that you create in your work and then how you manifest that visually?
I've always been a very opinionated person. I've always cared about justice. I've always had a really strong sense of fairness. And I'm really attached to speaking about women's stories, things that have happened to women, women who are no longer here. Yeah, it's really important to me to create really aesthetically pleasing work that draws the viewer in. And then as they look at the work, they start realizing that maybe there's something unsettling at the surface and they have to start digging a bit deeper to find out what the work's really about. I like to give clues, I guess, and not give away too much information up front.
Can you specifically tell me like a moment or something that pushed you into this area of discussion about women and women's rights and empowerment?
Yeah, it was in the mid-2000s when I was at art school. There had been a number of honor killings in the Lower Mainland. And I was honestly really shocked that this was happening in my community in Canada. And it really woke me up to what was happening. And so I created a series, When Honor Kills, at art school. And it was received really well, and it really forced myself and my classmates to think about these issues. And then I kind of put it on the back burner for years, and found it really kind of hard to do that work. So I moved away from it. But then in 2016, I had an art consult, my first art consult with Penny Lane from Dazed and Confucius. And she looked at me and said, Sandeep, what are you passionate about? And I was like, well, I care about women's rights and I care about gender justice. And then I just started crying. And she looked at me and said, Sandeep, that's what you need to do. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I pivoted, and she really pushed me into the direction that I wanted to go in, but I was too scared to go in. And so since then, a lot of my work has been based around gender justice.
So what skills as an artist have attributed to your success so far?
A lot of blood, sweat, and tears. Yeah. Seriously. I work all the time. I stay up late all the time. I'm constantly thinking about art. I make as much as I can when I can. I do have a 5-year-old son, so it can be tricky. I'm committed, I'm dedicated, I'm patient. I've created really good relationships with the people I work with. And that's really important when you're an artist, is making sure you're creating relationships with the artists around you and supporting them, and, really supporting the organizations and people that are supporting your practice as well.
Mm-hmm. I've heard that a lot when I've looked at, the practices of anybody that's successful, is that you have to put in the hours and just keep exploring, even though sometimes it's not very fruitful.
I'm looking for a studio next year, but I'm at home at my kitchen table, just working.
Yeah. And it's amazing what you've been able to do at your kitchen table.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy.
It really is, when you look at the body of work that you've created there.
And now I'm going to be painting in a week. I'm going to be painting a 50-foot by 30-foot mural by myself.
I know. I'm excited for you.
Yeah, me too.
That's happening in Nelson, right?
Yeah.
That's great. Tell me about finding your voice as an artist and woman and the circumstances around that. I think you've touched on this a little bit already.
Yeah. I mean, growing up in a South Asian household, as a girl, you don't really have a voice. I've always had a strong voice growing up, and so I think it definitely irritated my parents. But I spoke up whenever I felt something was really unfair. I challenged my parents all the time. And, I know that sometimes they wished I could just shut up. But I think when you feel like your community isn't respecting your voice, you work harder to ensure that it's heard. I really feel that is my job as an artist, to make sure I'm fighting for equity. And, what better way to do it than through your work and your practice? And so that's why with my murals, when I get to paint the murals I want to paint, I always have women centered in the murals, because I want people to see these women in the public space, and I want them to see them taking up space, and hopefully that'll encourage women to take up space in their lives and show that, we're here, we're not going anywhere, we're going to stay visible and unashamed.
These are real concerns. I mean, I was just recently looking at when people received the vote, and white women received the vote in Canada, just after the turn of the century. And then Indigenous women did not receive the vote until, I think, 1960.
Wow.
So as an artist, you're finding your voice as a South Asian artist and as a South Asian woman, but even within, with just in the arts, you have to learn a visual language. You have to decide on all these aesthetic concerns to try to get your ideas across. And you really have come up with this amazing body of work.
Like, as a South Asian artist, I don't want my work to come across as, stereotypical or like a caricature of tropes in my culture. And so it's important for me to create work that pushes and challenges and makes people uncomfortable and is subversive on different levels. And, sometimes I think artists of color's work gets categorized as like ornamental or decorative or too ethnic. And I want to push against that, because all of those things are coming through our heritage and our background and our cultural upbringing. And, I couldn't exclude that from my work, because it's so much a part of me. And so that's why a lot of my work is really maximalist. There's like so much color and so much pattern just crammed in there. And, you know, it speaks to who I am as a person in the culture that I come from. And I don't want to hide my cultural upbringing or background, because I did that growing up, you know, and I don't want to do it anymore. Like, I want it to be out there. I want people to look at my work and know that it's made by a woman, and know that it's made by a South Asian woman.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of life's challenges for every human being is to try to learn how to be yourself,
Yes.
learning how to be in your own body and trust your own ideas and mistakes, and allow yourself those, you know, those moments. And I think that all ties into like finding your voice. Let's take a look at one of your pieces, and could you just break it down and do
Sure.
a deeper dive on it for us?
I would love to talk about my piece for Facade Fest.
Okay, what is Facade Fest?
Yeah, so Facade Fest is a festival that happens every 2 years through Burrard Arts Foundation. And 10 artists' works get projected onto the exterior of the Vancouver Art Gallery. And you have, I believe it's up to 8 minutes.
Right.
So you can create an animated work that's up to 8 minutes. In 2012, Jyoti Singh was brutally assaulted in India, in Delhi, on a bus, and she died of her injuries. And just the pain, the collective sort of pain that came out of that was unbelievable. The number of protests and, you know, the anger and the frustration with this system that we live in, where women can be hurt and nothing changes. I really had a really hard time with that story, and I wanted to create a work around it, but I didn't have the tools at the time to deal with the anger I was feeling. And I never ever want to present someone's story in a lens of anger. I never want to, you know, have my bias enter that story. And so I just had it on the back burner, and I was just kind of waiting for that right moment to be able to tell her story. And so when Facade Fest came along, I realized that was finally the right platform for me to tell her story. It was on such a grand scale. So it started by me creating the imagery by hand, and then my animator taking it into her animation program, and then starting the movements and letting me see how things were moving. And, you know, I just kind of worked with her to make sure that everything kind of made sense. So it opened with an image of a woman, and there was a spotlight on her, and that was Jyoti Singh standing at the bus stop. And then I had 4 marigolds roll across the screen to represent the wheels of the bus. And then I wasn't sure how to show the attack, because I didn't want it to be gratuitous, but I also wanted it to be obvious that that's what was happening. And I came up with hands. So there were like multiple hands that basically consumed her to show what had happened. And then it went black, and that was the attack. And then I had red coming down the facade to show that she had died of her injuries. And then I lifted audio from actual protests, and I had like protest hands protesting what happened to her, but using the audio for real protests about demanding justice for Jyoti. And then I had her mom and one of the assailant's mothers on opposite ends, and they're both crying because, you know, you realize that both women, one is the victim's mother and one is the assailant's mother. They're both mothers at the end of the day. Like, that's what ties them together. And they both lost their children, because Jyoti lost her life due to the other mother's child, and he lost his life as a punishment for what he did. Wow. And so that really struck me, thinking about the pain and the suffering that both of these mothers are going through simultaneously, but they can't really reach out to each other to comfort each other. And so their tears ended up becoming this ocean of tears, which then created this jungle, like this new growth. And I wanted to show the good that can come from a tragedy like this, and, you know, what kind of reparations we can make in the future to make sure this doesn't happen to another woman again. And so then it turned into this like jungle scene, and I'm really inspired by folk art. So I had, you know, my folk art animals come in. There's lots of like chirping and animal noises. And one of my kind of, I think, key images in my career has been the woman on the tiger. She's appeared in so many different pieces of my work. And so I chose to really embody Jyoti as the woman on the tiger in this piece.
Mhm.
And so she, you know, suds across the jungle on her tiger, and then the jungle all falls apart, and then she's, you know, there, strong, empowered. And, you know, there's this sense of like hope. There's this sense of triumph, of joy, and then rest and power scrolls across the screen. And that was a nod to my first solo show, Rest and Power, that was dedicated to 12 women who had been murdered. And Jyoti Singh was one of the women in that series as well.
Mhm.
And yeah, it was just like, it was really cool to explore this story in a medium I wasn't familiar with. And, you know, it's like all these moving parts in this, it was kind of like a moving mural, you know.
Yeah.
So it was
Mhm.
really cool to see this moving mural tell this story that's so important to me, and in a way that I felt really honored her.
It's on a scale too that's big, grand.
Yeah, yeah,
The
you
grand
can't
gesture.
ignore it.
Your work really speaks to how art is a powerful tool to call attention to issues around women in
Yeah.
power. I think it's an important tool in that it's softer than protest, but creates discussion.
So I
Go ahead.
work through all of my feelings. It's through art. And sometimes, you know, when I'm on those drawing tears, that's because I need to process my feelings around things that are happening. And
Mhm.
the art just absorbs it. And then through that process, the ideas for projects begin to, you know, manifest. I don't take my role as a mother to a son lightly, even though he's only 5. Or I have to ensure that I'm instilling in him, you know, a love and a respect for women,
Mhm.
standing up for women, understanding sort of the issues women face, and being part of that change, and like speaking out and speaking up.
How is it for you being a mom and an artist?
Challenging. I like, for me personally, I needed to become a mother to be an artist. You know, I had all the time in the world to work on my art before my son was born, and I didn't. And the moment he was born, something just clicked in me, and I knew that it was now my opportunity to finally do the thing that I've been wanting to do my whole life. I need to be a fulfilled person in order to be a good mother. It's also a struggle with balance, because when I'm succeeding in my career, it means that I'm neglecting my family. And when I'm present with my family, it means I'm neglecting my career. And so it's a really hard balance to achieve, you know, when you're a parent who's an artist. And you know that too, being a parent who's an artist, and you have 2 kids. You know, but I think of all of the cool experiences he's had already in the last 5 years having an art mom. You know, like, I've taken him to so many things. He's met so many artists. He's gone on so many studio visits. He's done so many workshops. Like, he's had these really cool formative experiences, and I hope that carries through his life.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think it's an age-old struggle that women have been dealing with as soon as, you know, they entered the workforce and wanted to have their own lives. And it is a great way to teach your children that you do need to respect women,
Yep.
that women are powerful, and that they have intellectual, creative aspiration, and
Yes.
and are capable of doing it all. Like, and it's interesting that you use the word neglect, because I know what you mean. Like, you can be working really hard on a project, and you're not with your family, but then you come back and you have a lot more to offer.
Totally.
And you're, so I don't know that it's necessarily neglect. I think it's just balance. Can you talk about your Burrard Arts Foundation show?
Sure. Yeah. So I'm doing a 10-week residency with Burrard Arts Foundation this fall. And I haven't really touched upon motherhood in any of my projects. But I felt like for this one, I really wanted to talk about motherhood, but talk about the dark side of motherhood, the side that people don't want to talk about. Because you see all these like perfect Instagrams of, like, you know, moms and their kids, and everyone's happy and everything's great. And I just feel like we need to talk about the hard parts and the messy parts. So I want to create a show around, you know, the difficulties I've had with being a parent, and like what's come up for me, and how it's not always easy, as we know. And it can honestly get downright dark, and you can really lose your sense of self. I want to talk about how hard it is being a mother.
Yeah.
And all the things that have come up.
One of the most amazing things that happened to me as a young mother was having somebody tell me about a really like bad parenting moment. And it just made me feel so much better.
Yes.
Because there's always this constant struggle within you, because the quick and easy way would be to do something not great to handle your crazy child at the moment. Yeah. And you're kind of always having this battle. So having a couple people tell me stuff that totally made me laugh so hard.
Yeah.
So important to me. So this sounds like a great show.
We are flawed humans. Everybody is a flawed human, and we do our best. And I want to talk about those things in the way that I talk about them, through beautiful aesthetics, but with that like kind of unsettling sort of feeling just lurking at the surface.
So what advice do you have for your younger self about becoming an artist? And what did you need to hear?
I needed support. I needed to hear, we believe in you, because again, I mean, in general life, parents aren't really like, yeah, be an artist, kid. And then in my culture, it's a definite like, art what? And so, I don't blame my parents at all, because they were doing the best they could with the information they had. And, they didn't know what an artist is and what it does. And like, can you make money from it? I feel that if you're a young person and there's something you want to do and you really believe in it, you have to believe in yourself. Because if you don't believe in yourself, no one is going to believe in you. And only you can make this thing happen. Mm-hmm. And it takes a lot of work and dedication and commitment. You have to really believe in yourself. You have to work really, really hard, and you have to persevere through all of the bumps in the road, because it's not going to be an easy road. Being an artist, as you know, is not an easy thing. And you really have to persevere to like keep going.
Yeah, I really like Ira Glass's discussion about creativity and becoming an artist, where he says like, you have great taste.
Yes.
You have something to say. Yeah. And then, and you know what really good art looks like. And then you go to make it and your artwork sucks. And that's where a lot of people stop, because they're like, oh my God, I'm just like, there's no way that I can hit the levels of my taste. Yeah. And then that's when I think what you're saying is you got to kick in and you got to put in the work, and you do get better.
We do have this kind of obsession with like overnight success.
Yeah.
Nothing is an overnight success. You don't see what happens behind the scenes and what people have been doing to get to that point in their life, in their careers. And so, it's always that thing of like, believe in yourself, work really hard, don't give up, persevere through all of the hardships and the obstacles, and you'll get there.
That's hard to do.
Yeah, it is.
Like, if you told me when I was 25, like, just believe in yourself, it's just like, it doesn't just happen because you're like, oh, okay, that's what it is. But, it's true. Yeah. And it really helps if you have support. So would you assign us an art prompt?
I've been doing a lot of self-portraits. Mm-hmm. And I think it's always a really good activity for artists to do self-portraits. So you can really think about who you are and look at who you are as a person, but also who are you as an artist, and what is your voice as an artist? What are you trying to say? So I recommend doing a self-portrait, but in many different mediums. So during COVID, during the pandemic, I did a project where I did a line drawing in a folk art style of myself, a self-portrait. And then I recreated that portrait in a gouache painting. I recreated it in watercolor. And I'm not very good at gouache or watercolor, but I thought, well, why not just try it and see what it looks like? So you don't have to be good in the medium, just experiment, try. Mm-hmm. And then I did a paper cut of the image. I did a lino cut print. I did a textile piece. So it was really, really cool to see your self-portrait transformed over all of these different media, and kind of seeing like what resonates, what doesn't, and looking at yourself as a person and as an artist.
I love how exploratory it is.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for being interviewed today. And I'm really excited to try that prompt out.
Cool. I'll be looking out for it.
Yeah. Sandeep, where do we find you online? Where can we see more of your work and follow you?
My website is www.sandeepjohal.com, and then I'm on Instagram at Sandeep Johal Art.
Is there anything else that's coming up for you that we should look out for?
Yeah, I'll be having a show with Burrard Art Gallery in 2021 as well. So
wow,
yeah,
fantastic!
It'll be a busy year for shows. Yeah,
keep doing what you're doing. I'm so excited to watch you grow and learn, and I've really enjoyed this interview.
Thanks so much, Tristesse. I really appreciate it.